Roxie and the Hooligans by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. Chapter 5 A Slimy Sandwich. Helvetia's hooligans stood at the bottom of the tree, their angry eyes on Roxie Warbler. "I'm hungry, too," said Freddie Filch. "What if nobody comes to rescue us? What if we starve?" "Yeah," said Smoky Joe. "I didn't have any breakfast yesterday. I need to eat something now." She walked over to the trunk of the tree and sized it up. She looked as though she could eat Roxie. But Roxie was just as hungry and thirsty as they were, and she was getting tired of all their whining. "So eat," she said from the safety of the tree. "Eat what?" said Simon, glaring up at her. "Grasshoppers, ants, moths, caterpillars." "Ew," said all the hooligans together. "Ha," said Helvetia, "I like to see you eat something that disgusting." And right then Roxie knew how she would get down out of the tree without getting punched and pounded. "All right, I will," she said, and down she came. The hooligans stared and moved in a little closer. "There's a big black ant crawling on my shoe," said Freddie, his finger pointing. "You can have it." "Something better than that," said Roxie. Simon swooped down and trapped a grasshopper in his hands. His lips curled in a cruel smile. "Eat this," he said. "Better than that," said Roxie. Smoky Joe dug gleefully around in the damp earth and suddenly stood up with a worm draped around her stick. She held it in front of Roxie's face. "Eat this," she said, and her beady eyes gleamed. "Better than that," said Roxie. "Ha!" said Helvetia. "What are you looking for? A hot fudge sundae?" But Roxie walked on slowly through the trees, the hooligans at her heels. She knew from reading Lord Thistlebottom's book that if she ate something without cooking it, she might get sick. But if she was going to get sick, she had better eat only one thing, something spectacular. She studied the bushes. She studied the leaves. She kicked at a clump of dirt. "I've got it," said Helvetia, capturing a woolly caterpillar and dangling it in front of Roxie's mouth. "Chow down, Big Ears." "Better than that," Roxie told her. And then she found what she was looking for. There was a rotting log directly in the path ahead, and already she could see insects hurrying in and out. Helvetia saw it too, and began to smile. "Ah, breakfast for Roxie Warbler," she said. The hooligans gathered around. Roxie knelt down beside the log. She took a stick and began to poke at the rotten part. Bugs fell out, worms fell out, but Roxie kept digging and poking until she came upon some large white grubs as thick as her thumb, feasting on the decaying wood. She reached in and picked up a grub. A wiggly, squirmy, slimy grub. Her stomach began to churn. Her throat was tight. When faced with starvation, Lord Thistlebottom had written, "Do not panic. Wrap the insect in something more pleasing and imagine yourself having dinner at Buckingham Palace." Roxie knew she could not jump from planes. She could not face a charging rhino or swim through a river of crocodiles. But she could do this. She wrapped the grub in a dandelion leaf. And then, sitting down on a stump with the hooligans looking on, she opened her mouth. "I am sitting with the Queen at Buckingham Palace, eating a dainty lobster and lettuce sandwich," she told herself. Crunch! Her teeth came down on the grub, and she bit it in two, and wiggled a little on her tongue. The dandelion leaf gave off a sharp, tangy taste. The grub was cool and somewhat slimy, but Roxie chewed twice and then swallowed. Gulp. Roxie put the rest in her mouth. The hooligans' eyes were as big and round as coat buttons. They could not believe that, having taken one nasty bite, she would take another. "She ate it," Freddie said to the others. "Raw," said Helvetia. "All of it," said Simon. "Live," said Smoky Joe. Simon thoroughly glanced around uneasily. "If we had to. If nobody comes to get us." "What else can we eat?" he asked. No caterpillars with fuzz on them, no bright-colored bugs, said Roxie. Those could be poisonous. And before you eat a grasshopper, pull off the legs and wings. Hey, Big Ears, how do you know so much about it? Asked Helvetia. Oh, I just read it in a book, Roxie answered. What book? Asked Simon. Lord Thistlebottom's book of pitfalls and how to survive them, Roxie said. Lord Thistlebottom, the famous explorer, said Simon. You read his book, asked Helvetia, and all the hooligans began to laugh. She should read a book called How to Walk to School Without Getting Creamed, said Simon. She's so scared of us she spent the night in a tree, squeaked Smoky Joe. Freddy was the only one who didn't taunt her. Roxie looked around at her tormentors and then at the rotten log. Grub sandwich, anyone? She asked. There wasn't any more laughing after that.